Hey guys, hope you've been doing well. This is Yamini, your host, and today we will be talking about a triumphant story which came out of an adversity and gave birth to a wonderful volunteer organization that is now in over 30 towns in Massachusetts and other parts of the country. It is a special story for us, so we are doing it in two parts. Yes, recorded partly in my studio and partly on the field. This is an inspirational story of two women of Wayland, Pam and Sue. So, what are we waiting for? Let's dive in. Almost 10 years before Facebook was founded, Harvard political scientist Robert Putnam noted the decline in social capital in America. He noted engagement levels in several groups of civic engagement, such as union memberships, parent teacher organization, volunteering, had either declined or stalled. What's more, Americans were even bowling alone. Neighborhoods are such a foundational social unit of our communities. Before the world of social media took over and made us more connected and distant at the same time, neighborhoods were where people found connections with others. Our protagonist, Pam Washek, a beneficiary of kindness and resolve of good neighbors, made it her life's mission to make sure that everyone could access the kind of support she did from her neighbors in times of need. Out of this altruism, the Neighbor Brigade was born in Wayland. Alright, so let's start with how Sue met Pam. I'm sure you're intrigued about the connection.
So I was going along, right? Raising my kids, going to work. This was about 10 years ago. And I got an email from Pam Washek. And I had known Pam's husband because Washek Electric had been our electrician since we moved to Wayland. Kevin's such a great guy. And so through him, she contacted me and she said, "Hey, Sue, I know you have this, marketing PR background. And I'd love to just, talk with you for, half an hour. Would you meet me for coffee?" And, if I'm totally honest, I thought, "Ugh, I'm so busy. I don't think I have time, to do this." But, she's so lovely and Kevin's so lovely. Sure, I'll meet for coffee. So we met at, it was Brugger's Bagels at the time on Route 20. And we met. And by the end of the coffee, I was completely bought in to what she wanted to do. When we sat down for coffee, she explained that she had had a bout with cancer when her kids were still very young, three girls, very young. And when that happened, really turned her life upside down. Like, how was she going to care for these kids and go through treatments and, all of that? It was in her shoulder. I believe it started in her shoulder, and there's a very hard to pronounce and remember name, I think, for it. But that's where it started. But she battled it, right, and got through it. But it was hard, and I think scary. But at the same time, I think it really helped bring clarity for her around what she wanted to do and what she needed to do.
But how did she have the idea for Neighbor Brigade? Here's Sue discussing the genesis of the Neighbor Brigade.
Her neighbors very organically banded together and organized meals and rides and homework help and all the stuff that um, needs to happen to make their day to day run well. And when she got better, she and a friend, Jean Seiden, a close friend who had had a similar experience, they came together and they said, everybody should have that kind of support. And maybe not everybody does, have kind of a ready network to jump into action. Or even if they do, if you are being treated for several months, it's hard for your small group of family and friends to maintain that kind of support. It strains them.
What an insightful observation. While a handful of neighbors indeed can keep up the support for a few days, weeks even, they cannot do that for a family where someone's undergoing cancer treatments. These treatments, of course, last for months, and the fact is, this is when you need the support even more. And yet, nobody had thought about it, let alone do anything about it. The idea took hold, and people rallied around it instantly.
Right? And so their idea was, okay, let's pre arrange or pre-organize a group of volunteers, of neighbors, so there are people who live right in your neighborhood. Something comes up, somebody needs help, a notification goes out, those people step up to the plate, everything's organized within, a matter of a couple of hours to take care of that family or that individual for months. And so when they did this originally, they called it Wayland Angels because the recipients would say, oh, you're like my angel. Exactly. You're just what I needed. Thank you so much. It's just that extra sense of caring and takes a little bit of the stress out of what's an incredibly stressful situation. So they became Wayland Angels, and they got organized. They got a software tool, and then the word started to spread. So there popped up a Sudbury Angels, and Concord Angels, and a couple of them. And then, unfortunately, Pam lost her close friend Jean Seiden to cancer, and when that happened, something went off in Pam. A light bulb went off, and she said, "You know what? I need to make this a real thing. I need to make this an official, 501, 3C nonprofit."
A nonprofit. Yes. The wisdom of cancer, losing her friend to the disease that she had herself fought, Pam understood that she had to scale this. The world needed this scaled.
I think what her motivation was more about scaling. Okay, this was great that we created this here, but why don't we share? Why don't we figure out a way to share this blueprint, right, across multiple towns? It's so funny. Just I really appreciated the practical nature of what she was trying to do. That it really it was never presented as this grand, bold vision. It was more about practically being able to set up these networks, and in this town, and then in this town, and how are we going to help other people hear about this so that they can do that, so that, where we are now is every year, thousands of people are helped, that otherwise wouldn't have been helped, every year.
Indeed, a practical need like this does not need a startup pitch and a wealthy investor to take root. And that's exactly what happened. But Sue stresses it wasn't just the merit of the idea. Take nothing away from Pam, the person.
Times when she was well, she just was able to move the ball forward so effectively. She just was determined, and she again, she was a soft-spoken person. She was a gentle woman, gentle person, but she just could make things happen. She would get people enlisted. She would get to the right people. She was able to gather a small group of donors to help get it off the ground. A founding group of donors who I have to say have just been awesome supporters these whole 10 years, because I think they just they got it instantly that, yeah, this is a really, really good thing. It's a good thing to strengthen our towns. It's a good thing for the recipients, obviously, right? That's obvious. But what is maybe less obvious is what a good thing this is for the people who volunteer and help. Because when you do that, when a neighbor's going through something and you're able to do something tangible for that, it makes, it's the best thing that you do all month, really. Oh, I loved Pam. She, so here's the thing. It was never about her. In fact, she was really funny because when I was trying to help with the launch of it, I said, Pam, we got to tell your story. It's your personal story that, will get people really interested. And, she really didn't love doing that. She didn't love talking about herself, but she understood that was probably what we had to do. So she did let me do that. She let me tell her personal story. But it wasn't about her. It was about creating this network of neighbors, this caring safety net of neighbors.
Pam commanded enormous love and respect in Wayland and the wider community. A wife, mother, and volunteering icon, died after a 10-year battle with cancer in 2012. People still turn up in large numbers to attend functions that honor her memories.
I think it was maybe a year ago. There's a bench that was placed at the Wayland High School because Pam is a Wayland High graduate. And she and her husband Kevin were both Wayland High graduates. And so there was a bench installed at the new high school, and we had a wonderful gathering, and it was a fantastic, memorial.
While Pam came up with the idea and founded Neighbor Brigade, she couldn't live long enough to see what it would become. In fact, many other people who related with Pam and her vision worked tirelessly to make Neighbor Brigade the success that it is. There are many key figures in our story, and one of them is Sue. I'm sure by now you surely want to know more about Sue and her role in Neighbor Brigade. So let's talk about Sue and her journey from the very beginning.
Well, my husband and I originally lived in Weston, and then when we started to have our kids and we needed a little bit of a bigger house, we found a beautiful home in Wayland, and that was 25 years ago. So all three of my kids have been, born and raised in Wayland, and it's a wonderful neighborhood. It really is. I have been in the public relations industry since I graduated from college. And initially, I was working in kind of the retail space. I had done some work for Puma and, had been on the consumer retail end of things. And then in 1990, I was brought into an agency that was founded by a gentleman in Weston. So just, next door, basically, that focused on technology. And I really, really got the bug for tech PR. And so I've been doing that for, the last several years, I would say. Yeah. And that's been great. And I, here I am, 55 years old, and I'm super excited about the work I do because with technology, it's always innovating. There's always something new. You just do not know what's coming next, So that's been an exciting ride for me, and I've really enjoyed it. So at this point now, I own a small firm with two other women with offices in Boston and Chicago, and we love it. And Pam was one of these people who, she was small, maybe 5'1", maybe, and very quiet, soft spoken. But she was so sure of what she wanted to do with this organization, and I was so taken by how simply brilliant the idea was. And that's what excites me in my business, right? When we see an innovation that's just a simply brilliant idea, why you jump on it. You think, of course, we have to do this. I have to help you in some way. I have to be a part of it. And so she let me be a part of it, which was really great and really life-changing. This was 2009, it must have been, because it was a year before the official launch of Neighbor Brigade. And we're, getting ready to celebrate our big 10-year anniversary.
By now, I'm sure you want to know more about Sue and you already love her voice like I do. But let's start with one of the stories that I recorded on the field. And it was during this recording on the field that Sue really opens up about what was really going on in her heart, not her mind, when she heard and started getting involved with Neighbor Brigade.
I love it because it makes me feel closer to my mother. So my mother, I lost her a couple years ago, but she was, has always been a big inspiration in my life because she's somebody who is always about others, always, right? I'm the youngest of 6, so she raised us, and then, she was a stay-at-home mom, and then when I was in high school, she had kind of her own personal crisis of, oh no, what do I do now, right? My whole life, has been around raising these kids. And I mean, she would do some other things with our church and things like that, but that was really what she felt was her purpose. And it was interesting for me because I went through that with her, because I was the only one left at home, and she was very open and kind of candid about how hard it was, how hard that was for her. And at that same moment, she ended up meeting a nun in inner city Cleveland. So I was raised just outside of Cleveland, who had said to her, who ran a food pantry, and she said, Ann, I don't know where to get the food. And so my mother said, well, I go to the grocery store 3 times a week because I have this big family. I think I know where to get the food. So she went to the grocery stores that she went to, and she said, look, this food pantry needs food. And so they let her come twice a week with her station wagon, and they would put food in there that was maybe, a day old or whatever, but perfectly good still. And they'd load up her station wagon, and she would go down to inner city Cleveland, and she would fill this food pantry. And long story short, she ends up connecting with this retired businessman who found out about her story because it grew. Like, she then found other stores that would do it, and she got other women to fill up their station wagons and go down to inner city Cleveland with food. And this man said, have you ever heard of a concept called the food bank? He said, there's one that started in Arizona. Maybe we should think about that for Cleveland. And so she went to, I forget where it was in Arizona, maybe Tucson, but that had that had the first food bank, and she learned all about it, the blueprint. She came back to Cleveland, and with some support from my dad and from this retired businessman, they put together a plan, and they started the Cleveland Food Bank. I mean, how incredible is that, right? And it was really just all about doing that practical thing right in front of you, and figuring out a solution for it. All along with the journey, she kind of didn't think that she could do it. She used to say to me, she's like, well, I wasn't very good in school, and I wasn't this. But, before you knew it, they made her, like, treasurer of the food bank. They made her, and, she kept, like, she didn't think she could do it, but she did it because somebody had to do it, and then by the end, but she was that generation, she was, a product of kind of the World War II generation, and those women were very, very humble, very modest. They were just wanted to be useful, without fanfare, zero fanfare, right? Like, she didn't ever take credit for that stuff, and I thought, this made me feel so connected to her, because I thought, well, this is something I could do that's right in front of me, that is practical, that is, helping families, and so it made me really happy in that way. And so I had gotten involved with Neighbor Brigade before I lost my mom, and she was so cute. So I would call her, and she would be like, how's your little nonprofit doing? And I'm like, well, it's doing great, Mom. We got another chapter, this kind of stuff. So she was really excited about it. She asked about it a lot.
So now tell me something. Did this backstory make you smile? Because it brought a big one to my face. I want to tell you something. Behind every successful woman, there is a woman, or there is a tribe of women. So don't forget to support women around you. Don't forget to talk about them. Don't forget to be there for them.
I learned really early on in my career that, every article in the newspaper, every story that you hear is about people. It starts with people. And so I did convince her to tell her story a little bit. But she really wanted to figure out how to make this work. She, again, very practical. She was a very practical person too. About, how can we make this work? How can we really make it valuable to people? And the beauty of it is that her idea, it really did sort of organically grow, and then it grew a little bit with a little bit of public relations, storytelling in each of the towns, where it started, and then there was the Globe picked up a few stories on it, and then I got a call out of the blue, maybe 2 or 3 years after it launched, from People magazine, and they had that. Is it Angels Among Us, or it was a section in the magazine that was like that, and they called and they said, we heard about this thing called Neighbor Brigade. You're like, could we talk to Pam about it, and I was like, okay. So they ended up doing this really neat story. They came, they interviewed Pam and a few of the volunteers and recipients, and they did this really nice piece on it. And then the phone was kind of ringing off the hook from everywhere all over the country, right? To say, this is such a great idea. How do I start it? So from there, Pam had said, well, we're growing this carefully here in Massachusetts, to make sure that we really have the blueprint and we really have this down, and we've, thought of everything so that it can work. And so that really was her focus. But at the same time, she was really generous about saying, but if you want to start something like this in your town, we don't want to stop you. Here's the blueprint. Here's how we did it. But over the course of the years, so we were so lucky to have Pam as kind of like the guiding force and the visionary for this organization. And as testament to the strength of that vision, after we lost her, which was really only maybe 3 years after Neighbor Brigade was officially launched, it has just continued. It's flourished, and I felt as though she was really looking out for us, because at every turn there was somebody there to pick up the torch.
In the very beginning, you heard Sue talk about how it was important to bring Pam's story out in the world. But in my conversation with her, I never once saw her talking about herself. But I made sure that she did with my questions. She's a team player and an excellent board member for Neighbor Brigade, and it's evident from the way she talks about her team. Let's not forget, this is the story of Pam, our protagonist, the Neighbor Brigade, her creation, and Sue Parente, an incredible woman of Wayland and our narrator. Next episode, you're going to get to know in detail about Neighbor Brigade, how to get involved with it, and about a special fun event that's around the corner. And do not forget to talk about this, tell your neighbor about this. Happy National Neighbor Day. And stay tuned, rate, review, and subscribe. This is what can help us most right now. This is Yamini, your host, and you were listening to Women of Wayland, the podcast.